In England, Anglo-Saxon Christians sent missionaries to Germany. The most notable was Boniface, who is best remembered for challenging local pagans by chopping down their sacred oak tree. When the pagan gods did not smite him, many converted to Christianity. In his old age, after years of successful ministry, Boniface and his companions were ambushed by a gang of militant pagans and murdered. The Eastern Church became increasingly traditional out of necessity for survival. One hotly disputed tradition was the use of icons or images in worship, a practice long accepted in the East. Many in the West felt this was a throwback to paganism and violated the commandment that prohibited making graven images. The Second Council of Nicaea, which sought to resolve the matter, resulted in a compromise. Worship was due to God only, but icons could be used for veneration of saints. The Western Christians were not happy with this ruling. The stage was set for the split between the Western Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church. Second Nicaea would turn out to be the last truly worldwide council. In the 8th century, Islam expanded as far as Spain. Europe might have become Muslim but for a new emerging power, the Kingdom of the Franks. A young Frankish king named Charles Martel repelled the Muslim army at the Battle of Tours. His grandson Charles pushed the Muslims back into northern Spain. Charles also came to the defense of Pope Leo III, who was under investigation for corruption. During Christmas Eve Mass 800, while Charles was kneeling in prayer, the grateful Pope placed a crown on his head and declared him Emperor of the new Christian Roman Empire. The reluctant king accepted the title, becoming Charles the Great, or Charlemagne. The Holy Roman Empire would last for 1,000 years until Napoleon brought it to an end in 1802. Charlemagne became a father figure to the continent, setting in motion a number of vital reforms. Unfortunately, none of his successors had his abilities. The relationship between emperor and pope became factious, each vying for power. With its sphere of influence shrinking, the Byzantine Empire pushed north and northwest to the Slavic people. The most important event for the Orthodox Church was the conversion of Russia in 988 at the invitation of the King of Rus, Vladimir I. His mother Olga had been a Christian and envisioned Moscow as the third Rome. Several attempts were made to reconcile the Orthodox and Catholic churches. Unfortunately, that proved to be impossible because of the West's insistence upon papal authority. In 1054, leaders from both East and West excommunicated each other. Their long drawn-out separation was finally a divorce. After 4 centuries of Islam's aggressive advance, church leaders wanted to take back the Holy Land. The Catholic Church instigated 7 major crusades over a 200-year period. Most of the crusades were failures, and some total disasters. Tens of thousands were slaughtered, Muslims, Jews, and Arab Christians. At the same time, the plague broke out, one of the deadliest pandemics in human history, wiping out as much as 60% of Europe's population. Most people were certain it was the end of the world. The Crusades did, however, open up trade routes, causing commerce to flourish. Once again, money flowed to and from Europe. New wealth led to the growth of cities and a new class, the bourgeoisie, meaning people from the city, people who made their wealth by trade and later by industry. This led to the end of feudalism in the West and the beginning of capitalism. To counter the excesses of the new affluence, poverty-based monastic orders appeared, which supported themselves by begging. Most prominent were the Dominicans and the Franciscans, who took the gospel along the Silk Road to Central Asia and China in the 13th century. The Franciscans were started by Francis of Assisi, perhaps the most beloved Christian of the Middle Ages. Meanwhile, the church grew very wealthy, owning as much as a third of the land in Europe. The papacy reached its zenith with Pope Innocent III. He made it a capital offense to read the Bible in any language but Latin. No pope before or since has wielded as much power, and he called himself the supreme sovereign of the world. After Innocent III's death, the papacy slid into rapid decline, including a 70-year period when the papacy was in France. This resulted in the Great Papal Schism, in which there were as many as 3 competing popes. In 1453, Constantinople fell to the Ottoman Turks. The center of Christian gravity was now solidly in Western Europe. Time and again, earnest Christians called for reform. They were usually met with violent resistance. Many thought calls for reform were pointless, convinced the church was hopelessly corrupt. Instead, they sought to reclaim the best of the ancient civilizations. This rebirth or renaissance began in Italy and spread throughout Europe. Over time, the church itself was caught up in the spirit of the age. The Pope sought to make Rome a Renaissance city. This included the construction of one of the most exquisite buildings in the world, St. Peter's Basilica. To accomplish this, the church needed cash, lots of it. This led to the sale of indulgences. An indulgence was a papal certificate designed to provide proof of the forgiveness of sins. On the night of October 31st, 1517, an Augustinian monk tacked a piece of paper to the door of a church in Wittenberg, Germany. On it were 95 questions about the nature of salvation, refuting the sale of indulgences. The door functioned as a kind of bulletin board for scholastic discussion, and he hoped to generate some dialogue among his colleagues. This hardly seemed like the start of a revolution, but Martin Luther was in the right place at the right time. His action set in motion a chain of events few could have imagined. It would change Christianity forever. There had been countless calls for reform, but Luther had one weapon at his disposal that previous reformers did not have: the printing press. His 95 Theses quickly became the world's first bestseller, its author the most beloved and reviled man in all of Europe. The Catholic Church was largely unprepared for the Reformation. The swiftness with which people abandoned her authority revealed the depth of resentment that had been simmering for generations. Zwingli brought the Reformation to Zurich, Switzerland, followed by John Calvin, who taught that it was not only the church that needed reform, but society and politics as well. In contrast, the Anabaptists rejected any alliance of church and state. King Henry VIII broke away from Rome, creating the Church of England. If the Roman Church was to survive, it could no longer ignore the challenges presented by the reformers. In the middle of the 16th century, the Council of Trent, which lasted 18 years, sought to define Catholic doctrine in what is often called the Counter-Reformation or Catholic Reformation. One of the most important Catholic groups to arise at this time was the Jesuits, founded by Ignatius Loyola. Many were fiercely anti-Protestant, yet the Jesuits sent numerous missionaries to the New World, North and South America, and to the East. Jesuit missionaries believed outsiders must respect customs and rituals of indigenous people as long as they are not sin. But their successes were undercut by Rome. Church leaders would not allow indigenous people to be promoted to high office, nor was the Mass to be held in any language but Latin. This perpetuated the idea that the Jesuits were imposing Western culture on others. When the Catholic and Orthodox churches split in the 11th century, they were already divided geographically. Not so with the Protestant Reformation. As a result, 100 years of religious wars followed the Reformation. Many Christians were certain it was the end of the world. These wars and internal conflicts gave rise to rationalism, as intellectuals sought to bring order to this volatile state. In Great Britain, rationalism led to deism, the belief that God is not involved in the affairs of men. In France, it led to the bloody French Revolution, which greatly reduced Rome's power and influence. Others placed more emphasis upon a personal experience of God. John and Charles Wesley founded the Methodist movement, which sprang out of the Church of England. The 16th century was a time of great upheaval. It had given birth to the Protestant Reformation, the Catholic Counter-Reformation, 100 years of war, and the exploration and conquest of the New World, the Americas, which greatly expanded Europe's influence and jurisdiction. Spain's conquest of the New World began in the West Indies and spread through Latin America and parts of North America. While the Spanish sometimes destroyed native populations and introduced slavery, they also sought to convert local populations to the Christian faith. In the 17th century, England and France explored and conquered parts of North America. The British colonies in North America were made up of various Christians longing to get away from the religious persecution in Europe, the Puritans, the Pietists, the Quakers, the Baptists, and so forth. In the 18th century, a revival called the Great Awakening swept through the colonies. The most important leader in this movement was a Calvinist preacher named Jonathan Edwards. Calvinism played a vital role in the founding of the United States of America. For the first time since the days of Constantine, Christianity in Europe was marginalized. Many Christians were certain it was the end of the world and launched what has been called the Great Protestant Missionary Century. Evangelical missionary groups sprang up all over Europe and America. The Moravian missionaries carried the gospel to Africa, the Far East, the Arctic, and North and South America. Robert Morrison was the first Protestant missionary to go to China. Robert Moffat went to Africa, William Carey to India, Hudson Taylor to China, Robert Bruce to Iran, David Livingstone to Central Africa, Methodists went to Argentina, Presbyterians to Korea, Baptists to Northeast India, Anglicans to Nigeria, Congregational missionaries to the Pacific Islands, and on and on. While European churches lost nearly half their members, the 19th century saw the greatest proportional increase in believers than at any time since the 5th century. Once again, the center of Christian gravity was shifting. The culmination of a century of Protestant missions was a missionary conference held in Edinburgh, Scotland in 1910, chaired by John Mott. It marked the beginning of a modern ecumenical cooperation in missions. New technology, mass communication, the internet, and faster travel have enabled the Church to fulfill the Great Commission in a way not conceivable in times past. Every generation of Christians, from the apostles onward, is convinced that their generation is the last one before Christ returns. But one of them will be right.